Hello, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us for this video. My name is Nicholas Valentino. I'm the Senior Director for International Programs at Kaplan Medical, and I have worked with medical students and doctors from all over the world for the past 12 years that are on this journey of the pathway to medical residency in the US. And at Kaplan, that's what we do. We help international medical graduates not only do well on the Usmle exams, which is a big part of it, but really help them on every part of this process to help put themselves in a position to increase their chances and get into medical residency in the US. And today, I'm going to try and give you as much information as I can about that process and how Kaplan can help you along the way. So our goals for today, we'll talk about, firstly, why obtain medical licensure in the US? What are the benefits? We'll talk about the application process and timeline. We'll talk about tips to increase your odds, really understanding the current data around getting into residency in the US. We'll talk about the Usmle exams, which are the United States medical licensing exams. These are the tests that every doctor has to take to be fully licensed in the US. We'll talk about study strategies for these exams, and finally, how Kaplan can help. So firstly, why obtain medical licensure in the US? What are the benefits? The reason why most international graduates are going to the US is because it's that fast pathway towards specialization. When you're applying to a medical residency in the US, you're applying to a particular specialty, internal medicine, pediatrics, surgery. Upon completion of that specialty, you are then board certified in that area. And then you can continue practicing in the US, you can bring that training back home to your country, or you can go on for further subspecialization, what they call fellowship. So you would do something like internal medicine for 3 to 4 years, and then you're doing cardiology or gastroenterology or pulmonology and getting further subspecialized from there. All candidates enter the same pool. So what does that mean? We're going to talk about the process for applying for residency in the US. And there definitely are challenges for international graduates, and we'll talk about that. But whether you're a US graduate or international graduate, you're going through the same process. You're taking the same exams, and you are applying through the same process. Now, like I said, there are challenges for international grads, but the US counts on international graduates every year, and we're going to talk more about that. We need international graduates in the US, and that's not going to change. And finally, competitive salaries. You are investing a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money in your education. You want to make sure that that's going to pay off. When you're doing your residency in the US, it is a paid salary. It's usually on average about $50,000 to $70,000 US dollars per year while you're doing your residency. It varies by state. And then upon completion of your residency, US doctors are some of the highest paid from around the world. So you definitely have the potential to earn, and that's important. As I was saying, we need international graduates in the US. I'm not sure how many of you know this, but currently 25% of the doctors that work in the US are internationally medically trained doctors. So a fourth of our doctors went to medical school outside of the United States. And the American Association of Medical Colleges is predicting a shortage over the next decade, a shortage of general care doctors and a shortage of surgeons and specialists. So we're going to continue to need more and more international graduates to fill that gap. In this chart here, you can see the number of non-US international graduates that have matched into residency over the past decade. And they always break up the data into two categories: US international graduate and non-US international graduate. A US international graduate means you're a US citizen or you have your green card, but you went to medical school outside of the US. Not a US citizen, non-US IMG. But in 2020, this year, over 4,200 non-US citizen international graduates successfully matched into residency. That's doctors that are needing a visa to get started with their residency program. And that's the most in history, the most than ever before. So if you're an international medical student or doctor, one of the most challenging parts of this process can just be navigating your way towards applying. And They give you all of these terms, ECFMG, ERAS, NRMP, USMLE, to make your life more challenging than it already is. But this is where Kaplan comes in, really helping you navigate your way through this process. For international graduates, the very first step is ECFMG, the Education Commission for Foreign Medical Graduates. They're the ones that are approving you to take USMLE. So they evaluate your medical school transcripts, and then once you've completed medical school and you've passed your USMLE exams, which we'll talk more about, you receive your ECFMG certification. Once you're ECFMG certified, you're ready to apply for the match. Now you apply for the match through a system called ERAS, the Electronic Residency Application Service. Basically just a nice, neat way for you to upload your application. You'll upload your scores, your letters of recommendation, your personal statement, which is a one-page essay that you write, any awards, experience. You'll put it all into your application, and then you'll apply to different residency programs. So you have to think, what specialty do I want to apply to? And you can apply to more than one. You don't just have to pick one, but you'll have to think what specialty, and then what programs within that specialty do I want to apply for? So you'll have to research programs, and based on your application, what programs are going to be a good fit for you. And these are things that we help you with along the way at Kaplan. But you're going to enter what they call the match, the National Residency Matching Program. Now, the match only happens one time a year in the US, and we'll talk about that timeline. But you'll submit your applications, you'll apply to programs. Hopefully you get a lot of interviews. More interviews you get, the better your chances are going to be. And then you have to submit your rank order list. Basically, that just means you rank top to bottom, all the places you interviewed, where you want to go most to least, and then you enter the match. And then the hospitals, they are interviewing all of these candidates, and they're ranking everybody that they interview. And then the match happens, and it fits doctors into residency programs. Now, the match favors you. So you don't have to worry about, did this hospital like me more than this hospital? You don't have to worry about that. You rank top to bottom where you want to go most to least. So let's say you're going for a specialty that's a little bit more competitive, something like surgery. Surgery is more competitive than internal medicine. And you apply to 50 surgery programs and 50 internal medicine programs, and you get 2 surgery interviews and 5 internal medicine interviews. You could rank surgery 1, 2, you rank internal medicine below that, and you enter the match. If you're able to match into surgery, you will. If not, you still have the same chance to match into internal medicine. Doesn't matter where you put it. That make sense? And again, giving you a lot of information in this video, but know that this is what Kaplan's helping you with along the way. Putting yourself in a position to score high on USMLE and then make smart decisions along your residency journey. So what everyone is thinking about is their timeline. And the important thing is it's going to be different for everyone. Everyone is starting from a different place. Some of you may still be in medical school. Some of you maybe graduated medical school years ago. And that's going to impact different things along your journey. What all international graduates are working towards is preparing for the USMLE exams. And that's going to vary by student. Step 1 is testing you on all of your basic sciences. And we're going to talk more about the USMLE exams. But all the basic sciences. As I was just mentioning, if you're still in medical school, the basic sciences are fresh in your head. Maybe you're able to prepare for step 1 a little bit faster than somebody that graduated a few years ago and they have to brush up on those basic sciences. So it's going to vary. Generally, from our experiences, for international graduates, it takes about 7 to 10 months to score above average on step 1. Step 2 CK is 3 to 9 months, usually about 4 to 7 months. And then step 2 CS is 1 to 2 months. Now, there have been some changes to USMLE with everything that's going on in the world right now, and we'll talk about those changes. But regardless, the estimation of preparing for about 12 to 18 months for these exams is something that you're going to want to at least prepare for. Prepare for these exams, get your ECFMG certification, and then get ready to apply for the match. Sorry about that. Okay, there we go. get your ECFMG certification, and then apply for the match. As I mentioned, the match only happens one time a year. It happens every year in March. Applications are submitted in September. This year it was submitted in October because of everything that was going on, but normally it's September. And then you start your residency. Residency can be anywhere between 3 to 5 years, depends on the specialty. And you also have to complete USMLE Step 3. Now, international graduates can complete Step 3 before they apply or when they're already in residency. The benefit of doing it when you're already in residency is you're already in residency. You already have your job. The score isn't so important, but there are benefits of doing it early. Anything that you can do to make your application more competitive, program directors like to see that. There's also visa implications for having it done early. So it really comes down to your timeline and seeing how did the other parts of your application go and how much time do you have before you have to submit your application. But the goal should be to get it completed if you can. So you're thinking about your USMLE timeline, and then you're also thinking about your match timeline. So like I said, the match only happens one time a year in the US, so you want to make sure you're preparing for when you're going to apply. If you're not ready to apply, it means you have to wait an entire another year. So normally what I tell students is focus on Step 1. Focus on Step 1, score as well as you can. That's going to help everything else along this process, and then you see where you are. If you finish Step 1 and you are in August, well, you know, okay, I'm not going to be ready to apply this year. I'm not going to do CK and finish my ECFMG certification, do some experience in the next couple of months before applications. I'm working for next September, and then I'm making my calendar from there, working your way backwards. But these are some of the important dates that you want to remember. The year before you're going to apply, in June, you request a residency token. So you go to your ECFMG account and say, I'm going to enter the match, and they give you a token to open up your ERAS application. And that links your ERAS application and your ECFMG application. By August, all documents need to start arriving to your ECFMG to be uploaded to ERAS, things like your letters of recommendation. September is typically the start of applications. November through January is when you'll do your interviews with programs. February is when you submit that rank order list. And then in March, you find out if you matched, where you matched, and then in July, you start working as a first-year resident in the hospital. So I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, well, what are my chances? How successful are international graduates in the match? This is the match rate from this past year. So you have your US seniors. US seniors are always going to have a high match rate. About 94% of them get into residency. And then you have international grads. US international grads and non-US international grads, as we said. But as you can see, not much of a difference in terms of success rate. 61% of the international graduates that tried to get into residency were successful. Ultimately, those are pretty good numbers. That's the highest success rate that international graduates have had in 30 years. And remember, I told you, more international graduates matched in 2020 than ever before. So you have a higher success rate in 30 years, and you have more IMGs matching. These are things to be optimistic about. Now more than ever, opportunity is there. But then, it may be easy to think in your head, oh, well, it's getting easier. And that's the important thing to remember. It's not getting easier. It's as competitive as it's always been. The doctors that are taking their exams are doing well. They have well-rounded applications. They're getting experience. It just means that you have to make sure you're putting yourself in a position to have an above average application. When your application's above average, that's how you put yourself in a position to get interviews and ultimately get your spot. When the application's below average, it makes getting those interviews that much more challenging and ultimately getting into residency that much more challenging. So everyone needs to have an idea about their own application, right? There are certain things that you can control and there are certain things that you can't control. Your year of graduation, experience in the US, the scores, all of these things are factors that will impact your application that you have to just work to put yourself in a position to put your best application forward. So how do I get those interviews? We have to get your application looked at. The average residency program is getting about 1,200 applications for maybe 10 spots. So 1,200 applications for 10 spots. They do not have the time to go through every single person's application, look at your letters of recommendation, your experience, your personal statement. They just can't do that for every person. So what every program does is they set up what they call filters. Now, the challenging part is every program is different. Every program can create their own filters. So they ask program directors, of all the applications that you get, how many of them do you reject versus how many of them do you give a full in-depth review? So you can see it's about half. About half of the applications get filtered out. And then the other half, program directors are digging in and they're looking at your experience, your letters of recommendation, and then they're going to decide who they want to choose for an interview. USMLE scores are always going to be one of those first cuts. And it can vary by program depending on what that cut is. But a program maybe gets that 1,000 applications and they say, okay, nobody below a 230 on step 1, nobody below a 230 on step 2, nobody that failed any of their exams, nobody that graduated medical school more than 10 years ago, go. And then maybe the 1,000 applications becomes 400. Then they dig into the rest of the application, look at the experience, the letters, your personal statement. Then they decide to interview, and then they decide who to rank for their program. Okay? So again, understanding this process is going to help you make smart decisions along the way. So think about something like clinical experience. I've worked with thousands of students over my time at Kaplan, and clinical experience, getting some opportunities in the US is always something that's on the top of students' minds. And generally when I talk to a new international graduate getting started on this process, they want to do experience at a place they've heard of, like Johns Hopkins or the Mayo Clinic or Harvard. And well, I would tell them to go back to their application. Those opportunities may look good on your application, but they may not lead to networking opportunities that'll help you get interviews. So you have to really ask yourself, why am I doing clinical experience? Am I doing clinical experience to strengthen an already strong application? Well, if that's the case, great. Or am I doing clinical experience because I need to open up doors, show I'm a hard worker, show I'm a team player, and potentially open up opportunities for interviews? If you have a 250 on step 1 and a 250 on step 2, and you wanted to go from one of those fancy experiences, I would tell you go for it. You have a strong application, you're going to be in a good position to get interviews. You want to go rub elbows with some fancy doctors, have at it. But if your application's average or a little bit below average, I'm going to be telling you to be looking for clinical experience at places that you could think may be a potential landing spot for you, where you can work with other international graduates, where you can network, because that's going to go a long way towards increasing your chances. If you have a below average application, getting interviews from places that don't know you is that much more challenging. And I've worked with hundreds of students that only got one interview because they put themselves out there, they got experience, they showed that even though they had a little bit of a below average score, they were still going to be a good fit for their program. Again, all of these things, understanding the process is a big part of increasing your chances and making smart decisions about your own application and how you're going to increase your odds from there. But it comes back to USMLE scores. And like I said, the better you do on USMLE, the easier other parts of this process are going to be for you. So what do you think? What are the average USMLE scores for international graduates that were successful? For step 1, the average step 1 score for an international graduate that matched was 234. Unmatched, 221. So remember I said it's not getting easier? This is why it's not getting easier. 10 years ago, the match rate for international graduates was in the 40s. But back then, a 221 was a pretty competitive score. Now that's the average score for people that aren't matching. So this is what you have to be shooting for. If you're thinking about getting medical residency in the US, you can't be thinking about just passing USMLE. You have to be thinking scoring above average. Now, there are plans to make step one a pass-fail exam, which we're going to talk more about. But as of right now, your score on step one is the most important factor in determining your opportunity for interviews. So you can't be thinking about passing, you have to be thinking about scoring above average. And international graduates, they want that way to stand out against the competition. So you're not thinking about passing, you have to be thinking 230, 235 or better. And you can see the difference, right? Points matter. 13 points could be the difference between securing your spot and not. So I always tell students, I don't envy your schedules. I know it's difficult balancing school and work and family. But just know that everything that you do to get a couple of extra points, it makes a big difference. And one of the benefits about preparing with Kaplan is it's all about identifying your own strengths and weaknesses and preparing efficiently for these exams. What are your holes? What are your gaps in knowledge? How do you address them efficiently and then move on? That's how you see your score improve. And we're going to talk more about that. Step 2 CK, about the same thing, a little bit more competitive for step 2. 240 for those that matched, 228 for those that didn't. So these have to be your goals. And this shows you your chances of matching based on your step 1 score. So this is from the 2018 match for international graduates in internal medicine. Just step 1 score, no other factors. You can see the better you do on step 1, the better your odds become at getting into residency. If you had a 250 or better on step 1, you had over a 90% chance of matching into internal medicine. So you're really putting the odds into your own hands. If international graduates have a 61% chance of matching, but you know based on your application, you have an 80, 85, 90% chance of matching, well, that obviously that's what you're working towards. And that's what we want to help you get towards. And here's a breakdown by specialty to give you an idea. Some specialties more competitive than others. So you have to set your sights a little higher if you want to be competitive in that specialty. And these are the top available specialty for international graduates. You always want to do your research to figure out what are the average scores, what are the experience averages that applicants have, and how many international graduates are matching to that specialty. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about USMLE, United States Medical Licensing Exam. Before we talk about the exams, let's talk about what's changing, because USMLE announced some pretty major changes that are going to impact the future of these exams for international students. The most important was they've announced that no sooner than January of 2022, the step 1 exam would move from a scored exam to a pass-fail exam. So we'll talk more about that and the impact that it'll have. They also announced that they'd be reducing the number of attempts from 6 to 4. So it used to be that if you failed the exam, you could take it again up to 6 times. Now you can only take it up to 4. Ultimately, if you're taking the exam that many times, your chances are very low of getting into residency. The goal is to do as well as you can on your first try. And they also announced that you can't take step 2 CS without passing step 1. And then very quickly, COVID happened and step 2 CS exam was suspended. So there we are. And we'll talk more about that as well. So the most important thing about these changes is just understanding how does it impact my timeline. I'm sure there are many people listening to this video right now, and you know you're taking step 1 before January of 2022. And if that's the case, you're working to do as well as you can. You want a way to stand out as an international graduate. If you're able to take step 1 before the change, there's a lot of value there. Right now, as I said, step 1 is the most important factor for program directors to determine how to interview. So how does this affect your timeline? When do you think you're going to be taking the exam? When do you think you're going to be matching? The earliest that the step 1 pass-fail change is going to be January of 2022. So that means people in the 2023 match, virtually everyone in that match still has a scored exam on step one. You're not taking the step one in January of 2022, assuming it happens right on time, and then applying that following year. So everyone in the 2023 match still has a scored exam. 2024, you start to see some people applying with a pass-fail if it happens on time, but it's not till a 2025 match when this would become more of the standard. So at least for the next 3 years, having that scored exam on step one is going to be an advantage for international graduates. And as I said, international graduates want that way to stand out. So how is this going to affect international graduates in the long run? I think there are some obvious assumptions that we can make that other things become more important in your application. When program directors no longer have a pass-fail exam, then what else are they looking at to be able to filter international graduates and decide who to interview? Step 2 score, step 3 score, number of attempts on USMLE, performance in medical school. Right now, your performance in medical school has pretty little impact on the application process. Maybe that changes. Clinical experience becomes more important. Networking becomes more important. But ultimately, until the change happens, we have to see how the data plays out. We have to see what has a greater impact on interviews and ultimately match rate. But most of the people watching today are going to be preparing in the next 1 to 2 years, and you're thinking about doing as well as you can on these exams, taking a scored step 1 exam. And that's what we're going to talk about quickly, is what those exams entail. So step 1, all of your basic sciences, everything that you're learning the first years of medical school. And the challenging part about step 1 and really all of the USMLE exams is they don't just expect you to understand medical information. They want to see your ability to integrate that information in a clinical way. Really apply your knowledge across disciplines, across organ systems, in a clinical situation. So step 1, it's an 8-hour exam, 7 blocks of 280 questions. It's a computer-based exam, all multiple choice questions. As of right now, passing score is 194, but again, you're not thinking about just passing. You have to be thinking about scoring above average. The pass rate for first-time international test takers, 73%. Step 2 CK is your clinical knowledge, everything that you're learning the next years of medical school. 9-hour exam, same thing, computer-based, multiple choice questions, and both of these exams are given all over the world. So you don't have to travel to the US to take them. 9-hour exam. So these are long tests. At Kaplan, we give you 2 full-length simulated practice exams to do before your actual exam. 1, to see how close you are to your goals, but 2, just to practice the timing and the pacing of an 8 or a 9-hour day. And then you have step 2 CS. Step 2 CS is testing you on your clinical skills, really your communication skills, how well you interact with patients. This was a pass-fail exam only given in the US. And upon COVID, the exam was suspended. So for the 2020 application cycle, in place of the step 2 CS, international graduates had to take the OET, the Occupational English Test. They haven't announced yet what will be the 2021 plan for ECFMG certification. Does step 2 CS come back? Is it a different exam? Is OET still in place? So unfortunately, international graduates just have to keep their ear to the ground and pay attention on the ECFMG website. But I would expect soon they're updating international students on what they have to do to get certified for next year's match cycle. And then you have step 3. Step 3 is all about long-term patient care, the unsupervised practice of medicine. You can't take step 3 until you've finalized your other exams and you've received your ECFMG certification. Then you're eligible to take step 3. Step 3 is a 2-day exam. That's something else you have to prepare for. So what's the best way to get a high score on USMLE? A lot of people say study, and that's an obvious one, but it's really follow a study plan. The USMLE is a lot of information. You're taking everything that you're learning in medical school and really integrating that knowledge, like I said, across disciplines, across organ systems, into clinical situations as they expect the standard of care to be in the US. So it's a lot of information. It's too much information to just dive in unorganized. I'm gonna watch these videos, I'm gonna read this book, I'm gonna download this. You have to have some structure to your preparation time. Organizing your time, your subjects, what materials you're going to use. And there are a lot of materials out there for USMLE, and the most important thing, whatever you decide to use, is making sure you're organized. And I'm very confident that Kaplan gives you everything you need in an organized way to get that above average score, which is why Kaplan is the leader in USMLE prep. But whatever you decide to do, make sure you're not saturating yourself with too many things. And whatever you're using, you are setting yourself up with a plan. Sorry, keeps doing that. Okay, here we go. You want to approach content areas strategically to maximize your score. That's two parts. One, you want to think about, well, what are the most heavily tested topics and subjects on the exam, obviously. But you also then want to be thinking about, what are my own individual strengths and weaknesses? Everyone is going to have different gaps in knowledge. Where you went to medical school, things are covered differently, different focuses on diseases. You're going to have gaps. Success on USMLE is about identifying your own gaps in knowledge, efficiently addressing them, and then moving on. So yeah, you want to be studying exam relevant information, but it's more about constantly identifying, what do I know and what are areas I need to improve on. An important way that you're doing that is balancing content and questions. And this is a mistake I see a lot of students make, in spending too much time on questions and not enough time on content. With Kaplan, you're doing both. You're always balancing content and questions. In the beginning, it's heavier on content. You're going through subject by subject, you're building your foundation, and you're always doing questions to assess yourself. But in the beginning, it's more topical questions. You're studying anatomy, you're doing anatomy questions. Studying biochemistry, you're doing biochemistry questions. As you progress your way through, it's less and less content and more questions, simulating the actual exam, getting ready for exam day. And it's about learning from your mistakes. At Kaplan, every time you do a question, you get an explanation on why the correct answer is correct, but why every incorrect answer is incorrect. So you really learn from your mistakes. If you get a question wrong, or if you get a question right, you should be spending time reviewing that explanation. And sometimes, you'll get a question wrong and you'll read the explanation and you say to yourself, oh, I knew that, I made a mistake. You make a note of it and you move on. Sometimes read the explanation and you're still confused. And that's when you know you need to go back into the content, remediate that area, and then move on. That's how you see your score improve. So when you're creating a study plan with Kaplan, it's going to be this balance of content and questions, building your foundation subject by subject, always doing questions to assess yourself, make sure you're retaining the information, but in the beginning, more topical questions. As you progress your way through, more and more test simulation, getting ready for exam day. So at Kaplan, we're the world leaders in USMLE preparation. For the past 50 years, we've been helping international graduates and medical students in the US prepare for these exams and apply for medical residency in the US. Really what sets Kaplan apart are our faculty. We have some of the most amazing medical educators teaching our programs, creating our content, writing our questions. We have an entire team of curriculum support doctors and PhD doctors, creating our content behind the scenes, writing our questions, always making sure you have the most up-to-date exam information. And finally, we have flexible options. So whether you wanted to study online from your home, if you wanted to study on your own, if you want to interact with an advisor from home, or if you want to immerse yourself in the US and get a student visa, those are options as well. So you have to ask yourself what mode of preparation is best for you. Do you want to study from home, or are you looking to go to the US and study? We have a Kaplan location in New York where you can get a student visa and study from anywhere from 12 to 21 months at our New York Study Center. Any comprehensive course that you choose with Kaplan is going to come with our core resources, our books, our videos, our quizzes, our assessment exams, our Qbank, to give you all of the foundational knowledge and assessment tools that you need to do well. Then it's just about deciding what program is best for you, in addition to the core resources. So this is what our homepage is going to look like. You're going to have a guided study plan that's going to get you through the foundational material, subject by subject. Our books will follow along with our videos, and then you're constantly doing quizzes along the way to test yourself and making sure you're understanding the knowledge that you're covering. You can easily search for particular topics if you need to remediate an area. And you'll have our Qbank. So our Qbank is thousands of USMLE style questions. In your videos, there are thousands of questions built in that you'll be doing your foundational topical studies. And then you have your Qbank, which is another 2,000 plus USMLE style questions. So that you'll do more towards the middle to the end of your preparation to really simulate the USMLE. So our most comprehensive option is our in-center program. That's getting a student visa if you need one, and coming to our New York Kaplan Center. So you're engaging with our advisors there, working with other students around the world, attending a live lecture with our faculty while you are there, but you have the opportunity to immerse yourself in the US, get experience, and increase your likelihood of getting letters of recommendation and working towards your pathway to residency. Why study in New York? Well, New York's the hub for international medical graduates. As you can see, more international graduates match in New York than any other state by far. So there's a lot of opportunity for clinical experiencing and networking and other IMG-friendly programs. And we have a 6-story Kaplan Medical Center in Midtown Manhattan, New York. It's a very convenient location, 6-story location. We've opened back up in October for our students to come back to our study center. And then in January of 2021, new students are coming back in, getting back to our new normal, which I'm sure a lot of people are hearing in terms of a safe study location for students to come to. Study labs, group and quiet study rooms, lots of place for students to have a study environment with other students and with our Kaplan staff. Just some of the IMG-friendly hospitals that are located within a short distance of that New York center. Our most popular option is live online. So live online gives students everything that we have for USMLE without having to travel. It's all of the online resources we talked about, in addition to an actual live online class with our faculty. It's 14 weeks long of integrating the information that you need to do well on USMLE. You're also getting access to a group of medical advisors that are going to help you with study plan support, help you with residency planning, and you're getting access to a private Facebook community that for additional test taking and USMLE and residency support. And if you just want to study on your own, that's great too, and that's on demand. On demand is self-study. Basically everything I showed you on that first slide: books, videos, quizzes, Qbank. So all of our online study resources without any of our classes or access to our medical advisors. So I want to encourage everybody, take advantage of all of the things that Kaplan Medical has to offer. We have free seminars every month, free trials of our courses, free practice exams, free quizzes. You can understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. Blog articles, keeping you up to date with what's going on with the changes to Usmle and ECFMG. So stay connected, take advantage of Kaplan. We have a great relationship with your organization that hopefully we will continue to do these seminars to give you information, but take advantage of all that Kaplan has to offer. When you're ready, we have representatives all across the world that help students locally. You can visit our website, kaplanmedical.com/agent, and find a representative near you that you could speak to and get the local perspective on what medical students are doing to start this process. If you'd like to study at our New York Kaplan Center, I encourage you, reach out to Dr. Hafiz Khan. He's our advisor there, and he does a great job at helping students map out their journey. You can reach our entire team of advisors with our email and link below. And I want to thank everybody for their time. I know I gave you a lot of information today in a short amount of time, but I wanted you to see the full picture. Know that everything happens one step at a time, but we are here to offer our support. That's what we do at Kaplan Medical. And I look forward to taking your questions. Feel free to send them to us. You have our contact email, and look forward to talking to you soon and offering our support on your residency journey. Have a great rest of your conference, and we'll talk soon. Bye, guys.